You're in Braves country.
Good afternoon, Braves Country on YouTube and a couple other radio outlets, and we are doing this on TikTok, trying to get more accustomed to way. I saw that we had a couple of comments the first TikTok we did, but I didn't see it, so I'm trying to keep an eye on that and see if any of that pops off. But we are also on YouTube and at Braves Country Radio on YouTube. It's Braves Country X over on TikTok if you want to see the live post-game shows, which is where we'll be doing the post-game shows, as well as if you're a YouTube Country Club member on Braves Country Radio, you'll be able to see it there too. Essentially, what we're going to talk about today is the Dodgers series as it's coming up. And I'll tell you one thing that I did notice that's it's not great. If you saw the weather forecast for Saturday night's game, which is a bummer, but it looks like as of right now, when I was looking at it, it looked like it was going to rain for the majority of the late afternoon and early evening. And they're not going to, you could almost see them push up a game an hour or so, but they're not going to push it up too early because it's also the national Fox game of the week. So hopefully it misses us somehow. Today's game should get in. If not, what'll happen is that Schwellenbach will get bumped back to Sunday night's game. They could do a doubleheader. I would think they probably would if that were the case, if they end up getting rained out on Sunday, because how many more opportunities are you going to have the Dodgers to go back and into Atlanta? This is their only trip to Atlanta the entire season. So that's what we have there. As far as on the YouTube, what we have sitting on your screen, that is the probable pitchers for the series. If all three games get played tonight, it's Grant, Holmes, and Yamamoto. And tomorrow night, or could be Sunday, Schwellenbach versus Sasaki. And if that third game gets played, it would be Elder versus May. We knew that May was basically bookmarked for Sunday's game. They hadn't announced it until last I guess it was fairly early yesterday where they officially announced it. And I don't like to get ahead of it and say someone's going to be a starter and then you find out that it's false, because you'll see it on Yahoo and you'll see it on other different sites. And then until they actually announce it, it's more of a guesstimation than it is anything else. But usually your fantasy baseball sites are pretty accurate because they want to, that's their business, right? To be able to predict these. As far as, good to see everybody in the chat over here on YouTube. We got Clifton, John, Hellion. Who else do we have? James Hagan. And I see a bunch in the chat over in TikTok, but it scrolls so fast, it's hard for me to keep up. If I see comments over on TikTok, I will try to get to them, but it is difficult to see because it does move very, very fast. Okay, a couple things I want to get into, and this is Braves Country today. It's always going to be earmarked as Braves Country tonight over on the TikTok if you're watching over TikTok, because that's what we call it for the post-game show, and it's not worth changing the name. Uh, as far as the moves that have been made, if you missed it, Brian De La Cruz was picked up off of waivers from the New York Yankees, and a lot of people had some questions on that. I saw some questions on X and a couple other outlets. What happened with that? They were trying to slip him through the cracks of the getting him off the 40-man roster, because eventually you got to make room, because you have guys like Kimbrel, like Acuna, like Strider, all of them. You're going to have to make room, because when they go on the IL, they come off the or they can go off the 40-man. So that's essentially where it's at, and the Braves are pretty much at the limit right now, and they were trying to make some room, and had he slipped all the way through, the plan was to put him back into the minors, most likely AAA, and give them some depth, but the Yankees needed some depth at outfield, and though De La Cruz has not played well at all this year, he is a good addition when you're talking about getting depth in your outfield position. The other thing going on is Ian Anderson did make it all the way back through, and they put him into the AAA affiliate, the Gwinnett Stripers. So he made it through. Jesse made it through, and he elected free agency. Now we'll see if he ends up bouncing back. He could end up bouncing back. He could decide that he doesn't want to be in a minor league facility, and he'll wait for someone to have an injury or whatnot, or wait for the Braves to come calling, try to stay stretched out. But he was bounced out because it wasn't because somebody claimed him. It was because he elected free agency. He made it all the way through waivers and then elected free agency. De La Cruz to the Yankees. Kid Kelnick is in AAA. And we got to talk about this. What the hell is going on? Why do we keep putting Eddie Rosario back on the roster? We saw how bad he was on the game on Wednesday. And nothing against him personally, because Eddie Rosario did great things for the Braves in 2021. But he's really been a shell of his former self. What is he, 33 years old now? Since that 2021 season. He really wasn't that good in 2022. And then since then, we still see him constantly. He'll make it through waivers, and the Braves will bring him back. And I get it. They wanted to get Kid Kelnick down to AAA to get him every day at bats. And I don't have a problem with that. I understand that theory of it, because if you put Kelnick on the bench and have him sit over there for the duration of the season and only get at bats when being put into the lineup and pinch hitting and et cetera, he's never going to get developed. So I understand that part of it. So to get Kelnick back down on the farm and get him every day at bats, I understand that. And he'll probably get a little more plate discipline as well, because he's not so much pressure when you go down to the farm and you have several hundred people in the stands as opposed to several thousand people in the stands, and the TV spotlight isn't on you, and et cetera. You can really focus on your craft and not worry. Also, it's the little thing that nobody wants to talk about when they're down in AAA, but nobody really wants to admit the fact that those games don't matter down there in the big scheme of things. And so they will tell him to work on X, Y, and Z. This is hitters and pitchers, X, Y, and Z today and tomorrow and whatnot. Whereas when you're up with the big club, your goal is to get on base, to get base hits, to do this and that. And so they can develop them more. But there's got to be a better option. There's just got to be a better option than having. And if you're going to have Eddie Rosario, okay, if you're going to have Eddie Rosario, he needs to be on the bench unless there's an injury. I would rather have Stuart Fairchild taking at bats, though he hasn't been impressive either. He's a lot better defensively, and he's a much better base runner if he does get on. And we have seen Stuart Fairchild play the small ball game. He'll drop a bunt, et cetera. Eddie's been doing the same thing for the last several years, where they're very lazy at bats, where he tries to hunt the fastball, and he swings very early in the count. He doesn't work the counts at all. I would say that when Acuna comes back, and it looks like from everything that we're reading, it looks like Acuna should be back sometime in late May. I never believed the early May prediction. If you remember back in free agency, Ronald Acuna Jr., earmarked today. He earmarked today, May 2nd, because he knew it was the Dodgers series and he wanted to debut in the Dodgers series. Not going to happen. He hasn't even gone to any kind of a rehab assignment. Most likely AAA, but they could do AA depending on where they are in the schedule at the time. But I would think that they probably announce him going to some kind of a rehab start. It could be next week. I think most likely they're going to slow play it and he goes out the following week, and then expect somewhere around 7 to 10 days of him. He doesn't just have to go out there and get the at-bats and get ready. If you see him hitting the ball well, that's great. He's got to get his legs underneath him. He's got to get used to every single day being out there. And when they do bring him up, I do believe you're going to see like an every other day situation where he'll be in the lineup, then he'll be benched. He'll be in the lineup, and then he'll be benched for the first, we'll say 5 to 7 games. So the first week of him coming back. After that, you'll probably see 2 and then a game, because they're going to play this a lot slower than they did last time, because last time they felt like he never really got healthy. Remember, that was 2022, and he kind of had a ho-hum season, and then he took off like a bat out of hell in 2023, where he went 40-70, right? So I think you're going to see, if you're wanting to know when will Ronald Acuna Jr. be in the lineup every single day, within reason, he'll obviously get days off when it's a night game after a day, or a day game after a night game. I would think it's going to be closer to July going into the All-Star break, somewhere in that neighborhood. So we get that news out of the way. It does look like that's where he's going. He is going to be, probably, my guess would be, very tail end of this month. And hopefully they have him. If you look at the schedule and you earmark it, you very well could be looking at, there's a home date against San Diego on the 23rd, and then they go out on the road to Philly and then come back. We could be looking at May 30th, which is at home against the Red Sox. And so we're talking about 4 weeks from today. That would be my best guesstimation, but it really comes down to when they're going to put him out into the rehab assignment. Once again, I do believe it's going to be over a week of the rehab assignment, because they're going to slow play it down there. He's going to get a start, and then he's going to get a day off, et cetera, et cetera. All right, other things that are going on. When you look at, first of all, I don't think anyone's paid attention to this. Bobby Witt, y'all paid attention to this Kansas City Royals? He's got a 22-game hitting streak. Just keep an eye on that. I know it's a long ways off from Joe DiMaggio, but if there's a guy who's got the talent and the tools to do it, Bobby Witt Jr. is one of those guys, because he's not only does he hit for a high average typically, but he's got the speed so he can beat out an infield base hit. So we're going to start keeping an eye on that. The other thing is, and this is outside of Braves country, man, what Aaron Judge is doing right now, the tear that he is on, he has a .427 batting average, and they're saying that's 71 points higher than the next qualified player. In 15 of Aaron Judge's 31 games, he's recorded 2 or more hits. So I know a lot of us don't pay attention to other teams until it gets later in the season, other players till it gets later in the season, but that's not nothing. I mean, it really isn't. All right, now as far as the series itself, because I don't want to keep these too long, let's get into the actual series itself. And then we're just going to go on the assumption that they're going to play all the games. If you're just joining us, we do know there's really bad weather that they're going to have to navigate around on Saturday night. And when you're the Braves and you have Schwellenbach going to the bump on Saturday night, I think you're going to play that very conservative. You want to make sure that whenever Schwellenbach pitches this weekend, he gets the whole thing in. And you're fine with, let's say we only play two games, you're fine with Elder getting bumped back to the Cincinnati Reds series, which starts Monday. And by the way, from a matchup standpoint, Bryce Elder matches up much better against the Reds, because the problem with Elder is, and we'll go ahead and hit that game first, because I don't know if that's the matchup is going to get done. they have a decided advantage in the third game of this series if Elder and May go up against each other, because Elder has never pitched well against the Dodgers, and once again, who the hell does? It's a loaded lineup. But B, Dustin May has pitched really well against the Braves, and Elder doesn't have the swing and miss stuff. If you don't have swing and miss stuff, usually that spells bad things when you go up against a loaded Dodger lineup. Now, put that aside. Tonight's game, Grant Holmes, to me, against Yamamoto, that's definitely advantage the LA Dodgers. In fact, they're even favorites on the money line in Atlanta. Grant Holmes pitched against the Dodgers earlier in the year, and though it was a small sample size, he wasn't outstanding. The biggest question I have with Grant Holmes coming into tonight's game, which delivery are we going to get? Is he going to stick with this shortened sidestep delivery that's really more of a reliever's delivery? Does he just feel more comfortable with that? And if so, we'll just have to let it ride and see how it does. But he's not getting the strikeout numbers that he was getting before he shortened his delivery. Now, he may feel like he's getting a little more control. Okay, fair enough. But he's not getting that drive off that back leg like he was getting before. And if he doesn't have, we'll say, I'm going to put the number around 5 to 6 strikeouts. If he doesn't have 5 to 6 strikeouts in around the 4 to 5 innings, because if the game is close and we go through the order 2 times and we get to that third time through the order, they could have a hair trigger on getting Holmes out of the game, especially when you're looking at Saturday night, could be a rain out. And if it's a rain out, you can get really aggressive with the bullpen, right? Now, Yamamoto, his biggest thing that he's going to be looking at is Yamamoto has got that drop pitch that really is his bread and butter. If that's working, it's going to be a long night for the Braves hitters. But the wind is supposed to be blowing out. It's supposed to be warm temperatures. You can get that ball up. It's supposed to be blowing out to right field. If you can get that ball up, guys like Harris, guys like Olsen, guys like even Ozzie, even though he's struggling a little bit from the left side of the plate, if you can get that ball up, you might be able to do some things. The biggest thing to me is that hopefully we'll have Verdugo back in the lineup. If you're listening to the recording, we do these at noon on Friday. The next one we'll do will be noon on Monday. It's right before every series of when the Atlanta Braves start a new series. And then as far as the post-game shows, we're doing them after the game. Country Club members on YouTube, and then we'll do them on TikTok as well. I won't keep repeating that. I just want to do it at the beginning so everyone understands what's going on. Okay, when you look at the fact that we could get a rain out tomorrow, to me, you get very aggressive with the bullpen. Because now if you think that there's a good chance you're not going to be playing tomorrow, you don't even have to worry about the duration of the bullpen, even though you're going to play 3 and then 4 before heading back out on the road to Pittsburgh on Friday. This is the first game of a stretch where the Braves don't get another day off until May 18th. Okay. So that's a long stretch. But if you end up with an off day built in because of rain, which right now it's what it looks like, you can be a little more aggressive with that bullpen. And if they have a chance to win, and let's say they do start to go through that third time through the order, but they're very aggressive to it, you could see Holmes trying to get through 5 innings, and then you go get what would be considered at that point the bridge to build to the setup, man, but you could be a little more aggressive and not have to worry about, especially if you believe tomorrow is going to be an off day, and the signs point to that. You don't have to play the game of, well, we don't want to use this guy because we're going to need him when Schwellenbach, because when Schwellenbach hits the bump, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, that's the game that you really feel like you can win, because he's going up against Sasaki, and the rookie has good stuff. He's been up and down all year long. Schwellenbach has got to be Schwellenbach. Schwellenbach, I saw that he won like the strong arm pitcher of the month. I'm a little thrown by that because he didn't have his Schwellenbach. He had a great start to the month, but other than that, he was decent, but he wasn't what we think of when we think of like top end Schwellenbach. I do believe we're going to get it from him. He's a big competitor. And we got top level Chris Sale on Wednesday. We just didn't score any runs. And it's a little concerning to me that they roll out what is basically the B squad lineup on a getaway day. And I get it was a getaway day, but you had the next day off. And the difference is night and day with that offense, whether you have Verdugo at the top of the lineup or pretty much anybody else. Because first of all, you're taking Michael Harris out of the middle of the lineup, and he's been doing very well at the middle of the lineup. Top of the lineup, we've talked about it before. He does not do well at the top of the lineup. He'll get hot every once in a while, but all in all, I think he feels some kind of pressure, and he doesn't hit well in the top of the lineup. Verdugo goes up there and gives you professional at-bats. And then also, like Michael has said post-game a few times, he draws from what Verdugo says after he has that first at-bat. He goes and talks to Verdugo and says, what are you seeing? Because they look at each other as kind of like the same type of hitter, left-handed hitter, likes the ball low, et cetera, et cetera. So with all that being said, I would think that tonight is going to be a game where we get fairly aggressive with the bullpen. And if the game gets rained out on Saturday and you go into Sunday with Schwellenbach, and it could be a doubleheader. It very well could be a doubleheader. My guess would be Schwellenbach would get his dibs, and he would probably choose to pitch the night game, which means Elder would be the day game. Either way you look at it, you're going to be able to bring up an extra pitcher for that double header, and that would be a bullpen guy. So once again, you can get aggressive with the bullpen on Friday, because if you are rained out, you're going to have an extra bullpen arm on Sunday. And it would probably be a guy who would come up and just eat some innings if there was a blowout one way or the other. And usually in these double headers, one of the games gets out of hand. And just to be clear, John, Doogie will be leading off if he's starting. They have just played it really cautious because the day's off. But I still say, Doogie, if he's not in that lineup, don't put Harris at the top, because Harris has been hitting so well in the middle of the lineup, and you just mess with his entire approach. If you have to, we'll put Ozzie up there. But honestly, I don't hate the idea. We talked about it the other night, but I don't hate the idea of putting Nick Allen up there, because he's going to give you professional at bats, but it's not going to mess up the lineup to put him at the top. Eli White is giving you great at bats. I think he would be great in the leadoff position on the days, to be clear, on the days where Alex Verdugo gets the day off. Now, the Schwellenbach versus Sasaki matchup, that one to me is going to be a fun one, whether it happens on Sunday or Saturday. Schwellenbach, I expect these are the games that you want Schwellenbach to be vintage Schwellenbach, meaning what we saw last year, meaning 6-7 strong innings and a guy that you can lean on and really rely on. As far as Spencer Strider goes, still mum is the word so far on when he might come back. I still think it's going to probably be sometime. If you look at the schedule and the fact that they go out to Pittsburgh on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of this month, if we don't see him sometime in the Cincinnati series, and they haven't really mentioned that we would, then I expect him sometime. If everything goes well, we've got a 4-game series against the Washington Nationals at home right after we go out on the road for 3 to Pittsburgh, and that's probably a good earmark, assuming they said grade 1 hamstring, and that's typically not a very long out. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up, but those are really the keys to this series against the Dodgers is going to be tonight's start and how, not only how well does Grant Holmes do, I'm going to be watching his delivery very closely. To me, he's more explosive when he gives the full stretch, but for whatever reason, if you remember a couple of starts ago, he felt like he was getting more control with what is basically a slide step. It's not quite a slide step, but it's almost a slide step. And if he's got that in his head, there's nothing that you and I can say that's going to change that. We're just going to have to deal with the results. I would just like to see him get as much power coming off that back leg, because if he can strike out some batters, you can limit the damage in that Dodger lineup. And as far as the standings, I did want to hit this up before we jam out of here. The Braves right now are coming into National League East. They're 6 behind the Mets, and they're 2.5 behind the Phillies. The Phillies are 3.5 behind the Mets themselves. That's in a pretty good spot, honestly, because the Mets have played the easiest schedule in Major League Baseball. And you notice they took on the Diamondbacks and they lost the last couple of games. It's going to get bumpy for them. As far as the wild card, we are 2.5 games out of the final wild card. The teams that are in front of us, and we're going to start tracking this as we head into May. You've got Philly and Arizona both tied at 2.5 games behind San Francisco and San Diego. And then right in front of us are Cincinnati, who are 2 games in front of us. We'll have a chance to chip into that when they come to town for a 4-game set on Monday. And Milwaukee is 1 game in front of the Braves. Everyone else is behind us. So we've already getting ourselves out of the cellar, and we are past the Nationals, past the Marlins. And I know you don't get much respect for that, but it's a step in the right direction. And when you start off 0-7 and you finish off the month 14-9, that's a pretty good clip. And what we expect now, what we want to see now in the month of May, we want to see a winning record in the month of May. I want to see somewhere around 2 to 3 games over 500 bare minimum, because if you start building that, you're going to start cutting into teams. Teams are off to much better starts than they're expected to be. So there you have that. Braves are right there in the thick of things. I know the sky was falling after the first 7 games. The pitching for the Braves is getting much better, and I do believe we're going to get an announcement from Kimbrel during this homestand. It could come as early as Friday, but we're doing this so early they don't do the roster moves typically at this point. I'll double check one more time just to make sure they haven't announced anything in the last couple of minutes, but I don't believe that they have. No, they haven't. But Craig Kimbrel could very well end up coming up, and they may wait till after the Dodgers series to kind of run through some bullets, so to speak, and then start him coming into that Cincinnati series, because you still got another stretch where you're talking about 15 consecutive games after the Dodgers series without a day off. So you're going to need the depth in that bullpen. Craig Kimbrel's coming, and there's a couple other relievers down there we never get to talk about, but they've got other guys that are going to contribute. And I'm interested to see what finally happens with Ian Anderson now that they no longer have to play the game of worrying about him getting up and down. You got to put him on the roster. Now that he's gone through the whole DFA process, you can leave him down there until needed. And when that happens, I still believe Ian Anderson long-term has a chance. All right, y'all, we're going to get out of here. We'll see you tonight on YouTube. For those of y'all watching on TikTok, YouTube, we on our Braves Country Radio channel on YouTube, we do pitch-by-pitch, play-by-play of your Atlanta Braves with the 3D and all. I'm still trying to figure out if there's a way to do that on TikTok, but every answer I get from that kind of puts me into a perpetual circle. Y'all have a great one.